Well, welcome to the nap, the no answer period. Just doing a sound check. Yes, right on. We're back after being a week off for the nap, the no answer period, where we cover the question period, prefaced by a review of the far left evil that has beset our land and the events that surround it. The nap precedes a question period by 45 minutes, and we'll cover the lower house until the government decides to stop showing up. We also keep score, described in the description below. We're also streaming on 3 platforms, Rumble, X, and YouTube. I'd like to thank all my followers and subscribers for doing so, and if you're new, please like, thumbs up, follow, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. The chat is up, so please feel free to ask anything. Keep it any way you want it, and comments drive the algorithm when I'm not driving it down with my forbidden words. So, let's get straight into the intro, and then we will be right back. And, oh, so something happened there. Hang on a sec. Okay, so that's twice now. My morning show had the same issue. I went to do the intro and nothing happened. Let me see if we can get this back here. Let's do that and go okay. Let's try that now.
I cannot hear the parliamentary secretary. Order! I will let the parliamentary secretary order. Now I'm going to let the parliamentary restart from the beginning so I can hear the response. And then
if the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that.
The Minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears.
It's really hard to follow, isn't it, Mr. Speaker?
All of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Know that this government has their back and we will continue to do there's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Deficits are driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Hey, of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest.
Mr. Speaker, the grand reveal has been made.
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
There was some very unparliamentary language that we heard today.
Sets us up well for the new world order.
Turns out that the chair of the company is the former leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, and 3 of the directors are close family members of former Liberal MPs. So given that, are we to believe that it is just a coincidence that this cabal of Liberal insiders received this $200 million sweetheart loan?
Here,
Provided a $206 million below market rate loan and nearly $150 million.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
My comment by telling the truth.
acted while he was as the leader of the Conservative Party when they were in government. Not 1 inch to Tidewater, Mr. Speaker. Now contrast that to this government where we have record amounts of oil and gas being exported. Look at LNG alone, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that realizes the potential of the prairies, unlike the Alberta MPs that stand up and do nothing. They don't even listen to Daniel Smith. Shame on you.
Just a reminder to parliamentary secretaries, you don't speak directly to the member, to the speaker.
All right. Good. You see her? All right, we're just a bit of a updates. Okay, we're back. Good. Well, let's bring down the output. There we go. Had a bit of choppiness this morning, but not as bad as this. Of course, it always picks up in the afternoon. It's a chain provider. I seem to be having a deal with Starlink. Anyway, here we are, back at the House of Commons for yet another question period. So let's recap what happened the last time they were sitting. Well, as you can see here, they were off last week, and they're only in here for 4 days this week, only till Thursday. They're not scheduled for Friday or the following Monday and Tuesday. It looks like they blocked off into April as well. Of course, the first weekend in April, I believe, is Easter holidays. So, anyways, we'll see how this trends out. Let's get into the order paper, right? So every day, the House of Commons has an order paper published where you can find out the status of every bill, a question asked that requires a response by every MP. Still, there we are. All right. Let's go here. See if that fixes it up. Yeah, look at that. All right. Like I was saying, order paper. You want to find out any question about what your MP has asked. If you're wondering if they've asked any questions about anything, you can find it in here. Now, of course, to recap what happened last Friday the 13th, which was the last time they sat in the House. It was the disastrous job report came out, which was only a surprise to the delusionists who still believe that the lies Liberals peddle about their economic prowess. And so affordability was muchly dismissed and not answered by the Liberals, while they continue to celebrate their National Socialist band-aids for only a portion of the populace. Liberals continue to deflect their responsibilities and having no excuse for not informing the public about Canadian armed forces coming under missile attack. 5 years after, 5 years later, Liberals failed to build a single road into the Ring of Fire. And after nearly a year yodeling about how fast we're going to build, still only more excuses about protest, while the rest of the planet eats Canada's lunch on natural resources. The wind farm corruption loans to the Liberal insiders and cronies was perfectly framed by MP Kyle Seaback, referring back to the sponsorship scandal of the Liberal Chrétien government, and then the Green Slush Fund scandal of the current Liberal government, which has now morphed into just handing out low-interest loans with no guarantee of payback at the expense of taxpayers. Liberals have tripled down on drug dens, saving lives after more than 50,000 Canadians have succumbed to overdoses into the nether realm, and a recent well-documented study proved that common sense humans have known all along that if you don't feed the monkey on your back, you can get rid of the monkey. But Liberals insist on keeping the monkey his help. So the immigration minister, Lena Diab, was finally allowed to answer a question that last week after her disastrous performance the previous week that they sat. It sure really is a bit of a disaster, as other Liberal members had said so in the press. Well, she was finally allowed to answer a question, but only from another Liberal. All right, let's bring down this output once again, because that's the way we got to roll. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Right, so Lena Diab was finally allowed to answer a question, but only from another Liberal, to keep it nice and safe. One of the three questions that were asked by Liberals to Liberals to make the Liberals look good, so they can spew their propaganda, which happens every question period, by the way. They pretty well have all the same setup. First 6 questions are going to go to the leader of the opposition, if he wants, and then the next 2 questions usually go to the Québécois, and they go back to the Conservatives for a bit, and then sparse through there, you will get a few Liberal questions, and then near the end, you'll get the NDP. It's always the same process, and of course, these are all up to Steve McKinnon, because he sets up the questions for the day. All right, another, let's see. So Champagne got to boast about reducing bank insufficient fund charges from NSF. That was talked about this past week by other channels as well, from $50 down to $10. And as we know, all that's going to do is get the banks to shift that profit loss to some other fee. And if they really had wanted to help, right, where a real break could have been by getting credit card companies to lower their high usury interest, as Canadians have become dependent on those to feed themselves in the destroyed Liberal economy, right? Some people are putting food on credit cards right now. This is how desperate things are in Canada. And the Conservative members bill C-243, an act to change a convicted murderer's parole from annual to every 5 years, was announced, with the Liberal response to perhaps supporting it. Because right now, people are being re-victimized, having to go back in every year at the parole boards to keep the murderer who murdered someone in their family in jail. So now they want to say, no, why should they have to come in every year? Let's make parole for murderers every 5 years instead. So who knows? Who knows how far that will go? So that's pretty well a recap of the last day that they sat. And in the interim, we did put out some videos. Actually, it's easier if we watch it on, we look over here on Rumble. And what we started off with minister threatening farmers not to testify, as we discovered. That was a second breakfast. But so Liberal corruption continues, right? So this was more the wind farm, the low interest loan that was given to Liberal insiders. Another crazy Kevin video, because, well, they let him loose in question period on Fridays, or the last day of the week. So we can expect to see him on question period this Thursday. And he's always completely lunatic in his reaction. He's good for some footage. Then, of course, the OAS failure continued, part 5, every single week now. The Bloc have brought this up, and I expect them to bring it up again this week. So it was part 5, the Screw You Seniors, the old age security. PRAM software changeover from the existing old system, but the Liberals didn't do concurrent activity with the old system and the new system to ensure that both were working fine before he retired the old one. And they just said, no, let's retire it. Plus, the whole system's like over $6 billion. $5 billion if it in cost overruns, which the Liberals deny. It's in a cost overrun. They said, oh, no, we budgeted for that. Well, if you did budget for it, then open the books. And they refuse. They refused to open the books. And according to the Bloc in the lower house during question period, they have stated that it's not just the Bloc and the Conservatives who want to see the books, apparently it's other Liberal members as well. So, things are all nice and rosy in the elbow world. Liberals refuse to deport terrorists. This will be an ongoing concern, I guess, I'm sure, this week, because it was stated you have all these IRGC people in Canada, and you have terrorist attacks happening in Canada that you refuse to call terrorist attacks, right? Shootouts, people shooting at synagogues and a gym, and you have somebody that's missing and then found murdered, and you have a former MPP from Ontario that had death threats against her and a contract put out on her life. If it wasn't for the FBI, certainly not the RCMP, her life would still be in danger, not knowing what was happening. So I'm sure that that'll come up again this week, because they've only deported one person, and this is in keeping with the missile strike that they haven't talked about, that they refused to talk about until, of course, they were forced to talk about it, because they don't want to garner any sympathy, any at all whatsoever, for people who counter Iran, right? Because they've spent so much time cultivating votes from the Islamists that they've allowed into the country, so they don't want to be seen as, being on the side of the people who are trying to get rid of the Islamists in Iran. And we just saw today, apparently there was a terrorist attack in the UK where there's a separate Jewish organization there that had ambulances that they not only use for themselves but for anyone else there. But it's like St. John's ambulance kind of thing, right? Except they had 4 ambulances, and somebody went in there and torched it and attacked it. Yeah. So they brought that into this country. So they probably don't want the same thing happening. They know that if there's any hint whatsoever of Canada getting involved in supporting the activities in Iran, let's see maybe adding and helping for the security of the Strait of Hormuz, I can see for sure what will happen is next thing you know, there'll be an explosion of domestic attacks by the Islamist terrorists because we have let them into the country. Well, not we. I would say the Liberals have. Liberals, they're the ones. Everything they touch turns to SHIT. And of course, we had Liberals create Canadian poverty, which is just everything that people keep bringing up in Parliament. And they just keep asking, could you just stop spending money we don't have? Could you? Could you do that? Could you stop printing money because we don't have any goods to back it up? Could you do that? Could you maybe cut the taxes that are going to come into due on the 1st of April this year? Another 10-cent hike, is it, on gas? Thank you very much. And especially now, well, they might think about reducing that gas hike, seeing as, of course, with what's happening globally, gas prices are spiking. No new projects and land expropriations, so we've set up this 4th department to set up new projects, and you haven't done anything to remove the anti-development legislation that's still in place. What you're banking on is all these authoritarian bills to pass through so that you can, with your almighty power, ignore all the laws and do whatever the hell you want. Yeah, that's basically what the Liberals are waiting for, right? Because they've been sitting back going, well, we can't do anything until you pass these bills. Well, yeah, you haven't done anything in 10 years. What makes you think you're going to do something now? No, this is just make it easier for them to enrich themselves without any oversight. Because what little oversight we have now, it's not working. Because we still can't get into the books, and they're still spending money like drunken sailors on meth. My apologies to drunken sailors. And, of course, the Liberal military abuse continues with not divulging the strike when, of course, the Italians did it the same day. So there was no security concern whatsoever. The defense minister was back and forth saying, well, he didn't know about it. He found it from the press. And he goes, no, I found out again for myself. If Pierre Poilievre doesn't get a security clearance, then we can't tell about it. But he didn't even bother telling the other leaders of the other parties, and he didn't bother. Well, he didn't even know himself. So how could he tell? How could he tell Pierre Poilievre? So it's just it's a reframing. They're trying to say that, he's a security threat because he hasn't got this additional new level of NSICOP security, which always brings this question here, right? So the Prime Minister doesn't need to get NSICOP because he's the top guy. Although Carney this past week was saying that he's not the only spokesperson for Canada, for anything Canadian. He said that. He said he's not the only spokesperson. He's the prime minister. He is the spokesperson. Like when he went to Canada, he goes, hey, who should we find out? It's like if somebody who's running the country, who's a prime minister, the de facto leader of the country, comes out and says, well, I'm not the only spokesperson. Pardon? And this is their mindset of well, I'm not responsible for anything that happens. It's this guy or that guy, or it's a department, or it's a committee, and they just want to be so slippery that you can't even put your finger on them actually being in charge. Absolutely insane. So, in keeping with that, God forbid they should tell the Canadian citizens that their troops came under indirect fire from a stray missile. Because, again, that might grow sentiments in Canada to protect our troops and get involved and go after the Islamists, which the Liberals don't want because they know that'll cause domestic issues because they've let too many of them into the country. And then the other aspect, we had troops lose their fingers and toes during a winter exercise. I guess the temperatures dropped to minus 43, and that's not that cold. Winter exercises are designed, the equipment that I used when I joined in 1984, the same down-filled sleeping bags I used in my entire career. Absolutely perfect. The full layered system, a 5-man or 10-man tent system, and the equipment that we had at the time, easy to easily stay warm. And what I saw there was an absolute collapse of leadership. Because there's no way that somebody should have gotten hurt like that. There was no reason why the commander, if the equipment is that inferior from what we used to have, that it's starting to cause casualties during the exercise, you can call index. You go no duff, index, people are getting hurt. But no, they had to prove something. I don't know what the hell they were proving, but that kind of behavior, of injuring your troops, I thought we took care of that in our leadership training over the 38 years. Because I saw leadership training get better and better throughout my career, learning from past mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes that we had was not properly taking care of the people under our command in all aspects. But maybe now something's gone awry, I should say. If they're not taking care of the troops, what's keeping them from keeping care of their troops? Is it because they purged the armed forces of anyone with schmick between their ears? Now they're all politicized. They're all replacing tampons in a men's room. They got that clamped down pretty good. But surviving in our cold north using the equipment that used to work for us, apparently now that's not a thing anymore. The armed forces has completely collapsed and it's on its way down. Anybody says no, well, then why is the immigration minister trying to bring people into the forces that are mercenaries from other nations? Why aren't Canadians joining our own forces? If we have time, we might get into that, but it looks like we're running out of time. It's already 7 minutes to the top of the hour. That means question period is supposed to start a quarter after. Of course, it never does. It's always a little later than that. All right, let's see here. Right, you probably heard this story here where the plane, we covered this a little bit this morning at Second Breakfast, but here's some actual footage of the plane smashing into the fire truck. So if you don't know what's going on here, Air Canada flight coming in, and there was a fire truck being dispatched to another aircraft with some air quality issues. People were getting sick on the plane. Something smelled funny. And obviously, if you don't know anything about airports, you've got two control centers that share the same space. One of them is ground, and the other one is air traffic. And they both work together. Sometimes something can go wrong like this. And in this case here, the fire truck was given the go-ahead. And typically, I don't know, it's kind of weird because when you look at here, you're going to see the fire truck, will right past the gate. Well, they're not gates, but there's a marker at the runway. Because typically you'll come up and stop at that marker and they ask for clearance again and then go. They just blew through the marker because he's like, oh, emergency. I got to get there. I've been giving clearance. And they didn't check. They checked their six. They didn't check their runway either. They didn't check left or right. Anyways, he plowed right through and the plane smashed into him. And someone did try to stop the truck. They did try to say, stop, but they did not get the message in time. Maybe they weren't on the right frequency. There were a couple of cops on the fire truck, broken bones and such, but they're going to live. The two pilots are not going to make it. There's other injuries. It's pretty horrible. Wow. Can't imagine. Can't imagine being in a plane like that. Well, let's move on to what's happening. So Crystal Hope writes, a family from Brampton thought they'd found the perfect shortcut, dumping a mountain of household trash in a quiet Ontario cornfield. They thought they were being slick until they realized they'd left behind shopping labels with their full address printed right on them. The farmer who discovered the mess wasn't looking for a legal battle. He preferred a more pleasant delivery. He loaded their garbage into his tractor front-end loader and drove straight to their suburban driveway. When he knocked, a woman answered and quickly tried to play cool, denying she was the person named on the packages. But the plan fell apart when a younger girl stepped through the door. Farmer pointed to a discarded toy in the pile and asked, "Is that your stuffed animal?" The girl's honest nod was all the confirmation he needed. Out of the kindness of his heart, the farmer his loader, returning every bit of the family's junk right onto their doorstep. The lesson is clear. You can try to outsmart a farmer, but you'll never outwork one. Don't mess with the people who feed you. Now, along the lines of garbage, let's listen to this. But that is not what National Socialists do. If you read your history, after they've confiscated all the guns and established their eugenics program by getting rid of the useless eaters, and then brought in totalitarian laws, and then start going after political dissidents, having full control of the medical system, they will just brand you mentally deficient and then take care of you that way. That is how the end comes to all those who go against National Socialism, if you let it get that far. I mean, after all, you don't build a mountain of skulls without, first getting some skulls. Wide Awake Media says Dr. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, debunks the climate crisis narrative with 3 basic facts. Well, let's just listen to him. Are you tired of the green scam yet? Are you tired of Mark Carney making himself billions? He's going to be a billionaire by the time he's done scamming his way with his net zero Ponzi scheme. So Holly Doan writes, federal agency that spent $37.8 million last year to lower greenhouse gas emissions did not keep track of whether it cut emissions or not. That's the liberal mantra. It's all about virtue signaling. It's all about doing stuff that makes you feel good, but it's never actually about logic or science or keeping track or letting you see the books after they spent all the money. Auditors complain of lack of focus at Clean Energy Innovation Research Center. Typical. Absolutely typical. A fish rots from the head down, and we have a very rotten fish in Ottawa. Electroverse writes, one of the biggest climate scare stories is sea level rising, sold as proof of a looming catastrophe. But the data does not support this. As per climatologist Dr. John Christie, sea levels rose around 12.5 centimeters per decade for 8,000 years. Then it leveled off, and now it's rising only about 2.5 centimeters per decade. That's 5 times slower than natural rise after the last ice age. And in the most recent records, there's been no acceleration in the past 145 years. There is no crisis, no acceleration, and no reason for the hysteria. Unless, of course, you're just using it as a Ponzi scheme to get yourself rich and make everyone else poor. Melanie in Saskatchewan writes, oh good, another bank. Right. What is she talking about? Let's go down here and look. Canada hosts partners to advance establishment of the Defence, Security and Resilience Bank. Canada is turning into an arms producer. And that's usually one of the last stages something happens in a country before it goes full authoritarian. And then before it breaks apart. Another day, another uncanny carny coincidence where the same cast, the same language, and the same financial choreography from Mark Carney's Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, or GFANZ, quietly reappears in a new costume, this time as a defense bank, moving from nudging capital to directing it outright. And once again, orbiting the world Mark Carney helped design, where markets take a back seat, decisions drift further from voters, and we're all expected to nod along, as if this is just how things naturally unfold, rather than the same blueprint unfolding in plain sight. There is no way Philip Champagne came up with this by himself. I don't believe that. He's not that smart. He's a lawyer, he says. Good news, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure he'll say good news about something today, if he's allowed to talk. He can barely come up with a way to open his front door. I want to help you, he often says. Let me explain it to you. Wait for the starting the job is done. We're done the office. Wait for the job to go. Wait for the office to go. Doing the business. CPU spike for no reason. Oh, there we go. Yeah, 31.6. There we go. We're down. Okay. Because what Canadians were really crying out for, somewhere between grocery bills and rent, was a brand new Defence, Security and Resilience Bank. Not lower taxes, not accountability, not money left in their own pockets. No, no, no! $135 billion state-backed, globally coordinated financial institution staffed, studied, consulted headquarters somewhere fashionable to improving financing structures. Of course, we already have departments, agencies, funds, programs, platforms, task forces, and now a bank. For the other banks, backed by the same banks, solving problems created by the same system. Yeah, RBC, ED, Scotiabank, CIBC, all in. Nothing says public interest like the entire financial sector showing up early with a pen. Well, I guess all the same ones that were gladly confiscating bank accounts. And naturally, provinces are lining up to host it, because nothing boosts an economy like shiny new bureaucracy with 3,500 well-paid administrators explaining why nothing measurable has improved yet. Meanwhile, back in the real Canada, people are skipping meals. Kids are priced out of jobs. Families are doing math at the kitchen table like it's survival sport. But don't worry. Ottawa is building a global financial vehicle for defense capital flaws. Because clearly the issue wasn't mismanagement. It was a lack of structures. Another institution, another layer, another press release, and somehow still no results. But I'm sure this one will be different. They always are. Not. And right up by Melanie in Saskatchewan. If you're on X, please give her a follow. Are we doing on time? 5 minutes. 5 minutes to go before quarter after. Polly Doan writes, hundreds of voters abroad were improperly registered to cast ballots in 2025 campaign, according to Access to Information Records. Elections did not speculate on what, if any, impact irregularities had on results in 4 ridings that went to judicial recount. Yeah. So you thought the last election was a little hinky, did you? More proof yet again. Insane in the membrane. Why is it every time the Liberals are in power, something always corrupt and suspect happens? Right? Every single time. Every single time in my entire 61 years of living in this country, every time they're in power, it's always corruption that brings them down. Every single time Canadians vote them back in and then keep them in power for like a decade, be more corrupt than the last time. They never effing learn. 401, the Sarpanch? Yeah, okay. Da Sarpanch, 401, writes. Knock, knock, who's there? Bruce Fanjoy. Bruce Fanjoy who? Vote Bruce Fanjoy or Pierre will cut your jobs, he says. Carney government is cutting 12,000 federal jobs, right? So this is a little piece here from back then when Bruce was trying to say, oh, come on, you need all hands on deck. You gotta vote for Liberal or else you're gonna lose your jobs. And guess what? Yes, they are. Pierre had a plan. He was going to do it through attrition. Now, of course, the Liberals have decided that, because they never really care about people's lives, right? For them, it's all about looking good. So if they hired a bunch of people, spending money they didn't have to give them jobs, well, that was great. And it was great for them because most of them, they didn't actually have to give them a desk. They just gave them a laptop, told them to work from home. But now, of course, people are realizing that, well, you can't work from home. You can work in the office. Then I realize, we've hired more people than we have offices for, more people than we actually have desks for. Maybe that's part of the firing. We hired too many people. That to give them jobs to make the economy look good, and now we actually have to cut. Indeed. So they're still reading their statements by members. It's only 2 minutes to go before 15 after. Doug Boswell writes, tomorrow, 1,000 Sault Ste. Marie families will have no paycheck coming in. With a city population of only 82,000, Algoma, the largest city employer, this will have a huge negative effect on not only the employees, but the city. Yes, all the offshoot other supporting industries. This is a private sector layoff. It's not going to look good. Not at all. And we're still doing statements by members. Harrison Faulkner writes, Ontario Premier Doug Ford says Ontario is under attack by Donald Trump. Yes, we're under attack by President Trump on a daily basis. Our businesses are under attack, our communities and the people are under attack. I think Doug is really trying to take attention away from the fact that he wants to hide all his criminal cronyism activity that he's doing using the public purse by wanting to keep people from looking at his records. Sorry, I need to distract the people. Let's go back and tap into their Trump derangement syndrome. Well, looks here, despite the record low Canadian birth rate, Ontario is projecting a 30% population increase over the next 25 years. Where are they going to get them from? Obviously not from Canadians, because we can't. When I say we Canadians who are here, who've been here, right, that are struggling in this economy, are not getting free money from the government to have kids, right? They're not having kids. The Canadians who can still have kids are not having kids because they can't afford to have kids. But you're paying replacements to come in, and you're going to pay them to be able to afford to have kids, and you're giving them tax money to do it. So I guess Doug Ford's plan is to continue this grift of increasing the population in order to falsely give a good GDP number for the province. But realistically, if you look at the amount of debt that Ontario has, it is per capita, it is far worse off in debt than California. And California is like stupidly in debt. So that's how in debt you are in Ontario by these progressives. They're not conservatives, they're progressives. We don't have any conservatives running the show here. They're all cronies and progressives. Looking down here, and they're still doing statements by members. Let's make sure we're not a little too... No, right on time. We have time for another story. Yes, we do. The Reclamaire states the USA Environmental Protection Agency is on national television talking about possible fraud in Canada. Oh, yes, read that this morning. In Canada, government gave Lion Electric up to $700 million in subsidies. But Pierre is on Rogan. That's what they're all concerned about. Our children's future is being embezzled away. So, Lee Zeldin, EPA head, said Biden admin sent $160 million to the Canadian Electric Vehicles Company, this useless Lion Electric. They pocketed the money, didn't send any school buses they promised, and then declared bankruptcy. That's Canada's reputation right now under the Liberals. Good job, Liberals. Canada is going to be amazing. Do we really have enough time to get into this? This is an old story from a year ago when Theresa Tam's emails revealed unethical medical experiments on Inuit babies. Hear about that in the national news? Maybe there was this little blip somewhere at some time in the newspaper and then it vanished, but nothing more. No, nothing more. And they just gave her an order of Canada recently. Yeah, baby. That's the way the Liberals roll. Line Advocacy writes, various levels of government are clogging up court resources trying to justify unconstitutional legislation. Misconduct. It's draining hundreds of millions of tax dollars, requires millions of donations for civil societies, diverts intellectual capital. In a word, sabotage. Right? And what's he talking about here? Every single time the Liberal fights the Liberals. Yeah, it is. The Liberals government fight. You fight the Canadian citizens trying to get some answers about anything. In this case here, you could be talking about the Emergencies Act. Illegal invocation, found illegal by 2 lower courts. Now that the government doesn't like a decision yet again, is going to go to court because it's not going to cost them any money. In fact, they're getting a raise in a couple of days. Yeah, they're making bank. Making bank and fighting you all the way using your own money. Isn't that freaking awesome? Now, is this still a statement? Yeah, it looks like a statement. Well, we should almost bring in that in. Because I know if I get into the next story, we are going to miss things. Yeah, we're getting into the mRNA stuff. All right, let's bring in the lower house. There we go. Okay, so we're still doing statements by members. I know you guys have been gone for a week. You must sure have a lot to say. Can we fast forward this here? A little bit. And no, still statements by members. I think the Conservatives get the last say when it comes to statements by members before question period. Shall we listen to what he's saying? Sure.
I've spoken with my American counterpart, and Canadians are in LaGuardia today to get to the bottom of this accident.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Conservatives share our condolences as well. Now, on the issue of jobs, 108,000 full-time jobs and almost 50,000 youth jobs lost in 1 month alone. This Liberal Prime Minister is responsible for generational deficits and generational job losses. Development blocked, not a single major project approved. Now, this fall, I announced the Conservative Jobs Plan. Unleashing the economy, fixing immigration, fixing training, building homes where the jobs are. After a year of failure, why won't they simply adopt the plan that we've already put forward?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we will be answering all the questions from the opposition today, but I first want to express the sincere condolences and shock, frankly, of myself and I know all members of this House after the incident that occurred earlier today or late last evening at LaGuardia Airport involving an Air Canada Express aircraft. On behalf of the Government of Canada, I offer my sincere condolences to the families of the victims and obviously all of those many people who will have been shaken and affected by this incident. I have spoken with Secretary Duffy, my American counterpart. We will be continuing to work together to get to the bottom, to find the answers that Canadians are going to be looking for, Mr. Speaker, and we will get those answers for them.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Nobody, not even this Liberal government, can sugarcoat the findings in the most recent jobs report. It revealed the largest collapse in full-time jobs since COVID, over 100,000 jobs lost, and a youth unemployment rate of 14% now. TD called it weak, CIBC called it very bad, and BMO called it simply brutal. But it's more than just words. It's empty bank accounts, it's skipped meals, and it's fleeting hope. We need action now. Will the government commit today to adopting our Conservative jobs plan to get the economy back on track and people back to work?
Yeah, way to go,
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it is shameful to see the Conservative talking down the Canadian economy. Canadians are proud people, Mr. Speaker. We have the most educated workforce in the world, Mr. Speaker. We build ships, we build cars, we build planes. We have critical minerals, we have energy. We are the only G7 country which have a trade agreement with all the other G7 nations. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're proud of our workers, we're proud of our industry, and we believe in Canada.
That was a terrible answer, Buckley.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
The only thing that's shameful is an answer like that from somebody who has been here for 10 years, who has created a homegrown problem with their out-of-control taxes, their out-of-control spending, and mountains of red tape. And now we have the only shrinking economy in the G7, the second highest unemployment rate, the highest household debt, and the highest food inflation, and everyone else is dealing with the tariff war too. So when will this government admit that their policies are killing jobs and reverse course before they kill even more next month?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's almost as if they don't understand that we're in a tariff war, that there is a war in the Middle East that's threatening Canadians' economies right now. And Mr. Speaker, we've been preparing to support workers in these turbulent times. And yet again, they vote against every measure we put forward for workers. But that's not what the Ontario government is saying. I was so proud to sign the Canada-Ontario Workforce Tariff Response, and in fact, we got support from Vic Fideli, Mike Harris, the Premier himself. Mr. Speaker, provinces are working with the federal government to take care of workers. All we hear from that side is voting against workers time and again.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable, Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, a year ago, this Liberal Prime Minister promised a deal with the Trump administration to create jobs and to revive the Canadian economy. Well, today, the Liberal facade is crumbling. More than 108,000 Canadians lost their jobs since the beginning of 2026. We have the second worst unemployment rate in the G7, the worst food inflation in the G7. Still no agreement on tariffs. Canadian steel mills like Algoma are closing their doors. After a year, the Liberal wreckage of the last 10 years continues. When are the Liberals going to cut back their taxes, their policies that are hurting development, and their bureaucracy that Canadians can get to work? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the problem is questions like that when Canadians are standing together. Canadians are standing up for Canada. On this side of the House, we're proud of our country, Mr. Speaker. Canada has one of the most educated workforces in the world, Mr. Speaker. We are proud to build ships, planes, cars. We are proud to work with Algoma, which is still there, Mr. Speaker. We are proud to have critical minerals. We are proud to have energy. We are proud to be the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with all the other G7 countries. Mr. Speaker, instead of criticizing Canada, they should stand up like us and be proud of this country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Is the member for York have a question? The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that if you listen to him, he's not proud of the results of 10 years of Liberal government when it comes to the economy. They can blame everyone they want. They're blaming everyone except themselves. Mr. Speaker, all G7 countries are facing the same challenges, but why is Canada the only one with a shrinking economy? Canada has the worst performance of any G7 country. These are problems created by who? By the Liberals. And this Liberal Prime Minister has made these problems worse. 57,000 jobs lost in Quebec in February, over 108,000 across Canada. Why have the Liberals given Canada the worst economy? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to correct the record. Algoma isn't closing its doors, and that's an insult to all the workers there, over 2,000 working right now at Algoma. He maybe should have done his homework. One thing is clear, we are going to bring jobs back to Algoma. But, Mr. Speaker, what I want to say to all Canadians who are watching us right now is we have a good plan. We have launched our defence industrial strategy. That's 125,000 new jobs in Canada. We're investing in our Canadian Armed Forces. We're going to create jobs. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, what's happening today at the Supreme Court is the ultimate constitutional power grab. Canada isn't happy just to attack the secular nature of the Quebec state by challenging Bill 21. It wants to prevent Quebec from passing any law that displeases Ottawa by restricting the use of the notwithstanding clause. The Liberals are exploiting the highest court in the land to permanently weaken Quebec and the democratic will of Quebecers. Do they realize that this would be the greatest setback for Quebec's economy in 45 years? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before starting, I'd like to thank my colleague for that question. As the member knows very well, it is essential for the federal government to defend the Constitution. Now, the case that's before the Supreme Court is an appropriate place to debate this issue. It's not appropriate for me as Attorney General to have this debate here in the House of Commons. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, what's happening at the Supreme Court transcends political allegiances. Yes, secularism is at stake today with Bill 21, but there's also the notwithstanding clause, and that goes much further. The notwithstanding clause has allowed us to require that signs in Quebec be in French. It's allowed us to pass no fewer than 41 laws across Quebec throughout history that are all tied to our identity and to social progress. Do the Liberals realize that attacking the notwithstanding clause means attacking everything that makes Quebec what it is? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. As she knows very well, our position is clear, and it always has been. We are the party of the Charter. We will defend the Charter. We'll defend the Charter in front of the Supreme Court. As the Minister of Justice has said, the question is before the Supreme Court, and the fate of Bill 21 will be decided by the courts. It would be inappropriate for us to comment at this time. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speakers, the Liberals are attacking secularism by challenging Bill 21 at the Supreme Court, but it goes much further when they talk about limiting the use of the notwithstanding clause. They want to give themselves the right to oversee all of Quebec's laws. That amounts to placing Quebec's democracy under the guardianship of elected officials and judges from English Canada. The notwithstanding clause is the compromise that allowed the Charter to be adopted in 1982. There wouldn't even be a Charter without that clause. Will today's Liberals come to their senses and respect the compromise signed by the Liberals of 1982? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, it's shocking to see that the Bloc Québécois is trying to avoid the real question that all Quebecers are concerned with, certainly the Quebecers who live in this region. It's the economic apocalypse that the leader of the provincial equivalent of the Bloc Québécois wants to inflict on Quebecers. And we have to speak clearly to people who work in the public sector across Ottawa and Canada. It's shameful what's happening. The Blocs should be standing up for those Quebecers here in this region who are helping us build Canada.
A year of this Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians got more rhetoric, not results. Instead of energy security and thousands of new jobs, Liberals blocked pipelines. Instead of investment and growth, Liberals drove out more than $500 billion worth of it. And Liberals liberaled. Canada finished 2025 with a shrinking economy, the second most highest unemployment, and the highest household debt and food inflation in the G7. Can someone over there explain why Canada has the second worst unemployment and the only shrinking economy in the G7?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy. And natural resources.
As the member opposite well knows, oil and gas production in Canada is up 34% in the last 10 years. That is compared to globally only up 6%. This is record production levels we're seeing. We're seeing new infrastructure come on all of the time. Obviously Trans Mountain, obviously we're now talking about optimizing that. But we got Silistans, we got Taylor to Gordon, we got NextGen and Denison's uranium mines. We got LNG projects from Cedar to Woodfibre to Tilbury to LNG Canada 2. We are building and we will continue to build. We welcome them to get on board.
The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
That guy from Alberta should be ashamed of himself for supporting the same government that keeps blocking pipelines and other energy projects. That's why 100,000 jobs were lost in the last month. Most of those were in the private sector. And other G7 countries' economies are growing. Canada's is shrinking. We all are facing the same global factors. It's because his Prime Minister keeps raising the deficits and his taxes. Why don't the Liberals put their taxes, policies, and deficits out of work so Canadians can get back to work?
I know he meant that honourable member. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I feel sad for the members opposite who look through the good news to find the bad news every day and bring their misery to this chamber. But here's the reality. Here is the absolute reality. There has never been a better time to be in energy in Alberta. There has never been a better time to be in energy in Canada. We are building strong, and we welcome you to get on board.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, according to Statistics Canada, over 100,000 jobs have been lost in the first 2 months of this year. And today, Algoma Steel will be laying off 1,000 workers. These are families that are now left wondering how they're going to pay their bills or put food on their table. After years of warning signs, this Liberal government continues to impose policies that weaken our competitiveness and cost Canadian jobs. So will the Liberals explain why they have given Canada the second worst unemployment in the G7 and the only shrinking economy in the G7?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
It's a tough day for many families in Sault Ste. Marie and many workers at Algoma, but we will bring back these jobs, and we're working on a plan to make sure that the workers get their jobs back. I've been to Sault Ste. Marie 2 times. I've met with the Algoma CEO. I'm meeting with him again. They have 2 interesting projects. The first one on the defense front, the second one on infrastructure. We will build homes in Canada using steel from Algoma, and we will build ships and planes and vehicles across the country made with Algoma steel as well.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to taking responsibility, this Liberal government has a long record of making excuses and very few results. After 10 years, Canadians are carrying record household debt, and they're facing the highest food inflation in the G7 and living
in the only shrinking economy in the G7. These are the consequences of policy choices that have driven up costs and have made it harder for businesses to grow and create those jobs. So when will the Prime Minister cut his taxes, slash red tape, and empower our businesses so Canadians can get back to work?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, in the past week alone, we've announced a $40 billion plan to transform Canada's North and Arctic with $10 billion in major projects, a $900 million investment to support drone development and quantum technologies, a $200 million investment in Canada's space launch capabilities in Atlantic Canada, a $300 million contract for new modular assault rifles, and over $1.4 billion for domestic ammunition production in Ontario and Quebec. Mr. Speaker, our focus is on delivering security, sovereignty, and thousands of jobs.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, Algoma Steel is laying off 1,000 workers today who will join the 108,000 full-time workers who also lost their jobs in February. The Liberal government can't blame outside factors. The rest of the world exists in the same global economy, but only Canada has a shrinking economy among G7 countries. So when will the Liberals get out of the way, get rid of their taxes, anti-development laws, and bureaucracies that are killing Canadian jobs and let Canadians get back to work?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
I have a lot of time and respect for my colleagues, but when he says that we cannot blame anything linked to what is happening in the world to what is happening in Algoma, I think he doesn't understand the 50% tariffs by Washington against Algoma workers, because that is the reality. Now, we've been in solution mode. We've said that for the 1,000 workers at Algoma, we would be there to support them and also find jobs. We're also in discussion with Tenaris, an important steel company in Sault Ste. Marie. We'll create jobs at Tenaris as well.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government has spent the last 10 years setting the stage for today's rising unemployment. The industrial carbon tax, anti-development laws, bloated bureaucracy, staggering debt and deficits, failure to approve a single pipeline, failure to build any major projects like they promised, and their failure to secure a trade deal, which they also promised to do, are all killing Canadian jobs. So when will this Liberal government at least stop making things worse?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, let me bring a bit of facts in this discussion. Fact, Canada has the lowest net debt to GDP in the G7. Fact number 2, Mr. Speaker, Canada is one of the lowest deficit to GDP in the G7. Fact 3, Mr. Speaker, Canada has the second fastest growing economy in the G7, Mr. Speaker. Fact 4, we've attracted more foreign direct investment lately than in the last 18 years. Mr. Speaker, we should celebrate Canada, celebrate our worker, celebrate our industry. Mr. Speaker, Canada will build the strongest economy in the G7.
The Honourable Member for Kenora-Kiiwetinoong.
Canada has already lost 100,000 jobs this year, and today Algoma Steel is laying off 1,000 workers. The Liberal Prime Minister can't just blame global factors, because Canada has the only shrinking economy, the second highest unemployment, the highest food inflation, and the highest household debt in the G7, Mr. Speaker. These are problems the Liberals created, and this Liberal Prime Minister has made worse by blocking growth with anti-energy laws, failing to approve a single new major project, and breaking his promise to secure a trade deal last year. So, Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals get their taxes and policies out of the way so that Canadians can get back to work?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I was proud to be in Sault Ste. Marie not 10 days ago to meet with the United Steelworkers, to meet with representatives of Algoma Steel, who are proud to be deploying the most efficient and largest electric arc furnace in North America, who are going to be able to produce steel for our ships, for our homes, for applications all over the country, and surprise, surprise, also for a high-speed rail network, Mr. Speaker. Wow. This is important work. This is going to be done by the men and women of the United Steelworkers in Sault Ste. Marie, in Algoma.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. A dramatic turn of events, Mr. Speaker, in the Curum software case. For weeks, the Liberals have been insisting that there are no cost overruns, even though costs have climbed from $1.75 to $6.6 billion. On Friday, the federal government admitted to the media that the $6.6 billion bill is far from final. The Liberals forgot to factor in operating costs. According to an expert, those could cost an additional $660 million per year. That's a bit more than one Saclic scandal every year. When will there be a public independent inquiry, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Jobs.
Waiting to start their OAS is declining. In fact, Canadians expect a modern benefit delivery system that makes sure that their benefits are available when they need them. 7.7 million Canadians were transferred to the new system without any problem, and those that are waiting are largely paper applications. We have a plan and a process to get through those, and if anyone is in urgent need, we can get their money to them within 24 to 48 hours.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. You know, Mr. Speaker, recognizing that there's a problem is part of the solution. It's always a disaster when Ottawa tries to run an IT project. The Auditor General has shown in the report today that it might not be over this problem by replacing the disastrous Phoenix software with a new system called Dayforce. The Liberals are repeating the same mistakes. The Auditor General has revealed that they're rushing the 3-year transition, in addition to ignoring certain expenses. They're cutting corners again, even after cutting corners with Phoenix, Curum, ArriveCan, and many more. When will there be a public independent inquiry to put an end to these fiascos? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. In terms of the Auditor General's report on the transition to a modern pay system, Dayforce, in this case, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Auditor General for her report where she notes that the transition is going well, that progress is being made. She has recommendations that we accept, but she's also said, Mr. Speaker, that Canadians are going to find value in what's been invested in this new system. And unlike what was done with Phoenix, we have learned from the mistakes of the past. We are going to put it in place gradually to make sure that the transition goes well and that our public servants get the right pay at the right time. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the government's economic record is disastrous. 100,000 jobs lost in 2 months, and the announcement today that 1,000 workers at Algoma Steel are being laid off, Mr. Speaker. While our G7 partners are moving forward, Canada is falling behind. How have the Liberals managed to make Canada the country with the second highest unemployment rate and the only shrinking economy in the G7, Mr. Speaker? How have they done it? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, obviously our thoughts are with the workers who are affected at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie. I've had the opportunity to meet with the workers, with their union, with the leadership as well at Algoma Steel. We are looking for solutions because we know, unlike what the Conservatives are saying, that these job losses are caused by the tariff war. So despite everything, we are helping Algoma get new business projects that are going to bring those jobs back to Algoma Steel. We're convinced that we'll be able to do it in the coming months. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Well, I would invite them to take off their rose-colored glasses, Mr. Speaker. It's their taxes, their bureaucracy, and their anti-energy laws that are suffocating our businesses, Mr. Speaker. And that means that food inflation in Canada is the highest in the G7, and Canadian families are the most burdened by debt. When will the Liberals roll back their taxes and their red tape so that Canadian businesses can breathe again, and so that Canadians can finally get back to work? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, it's as if the Conservative colleagues were living on a desert island, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that Canada, like all other G7 countries, is facing a trade war, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we have put in place an ambitious plan to make Canada's economy the strongest in the G7, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, unlike what my colleague has said, Canada is in an enviable position in the G7. We're investing in our businesses, we're investing in our workers, we're investing to make Canada the most resilient economy in the G7. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I hear my colleagues say that we have the best position in the G7, but Mr. Speaker, since January 1st of this year, more than 100,000 jobs have been lost in Canada. Today, 1,000 additional jobs have been lost, the highest food inflation and the only shrinking economy in the G7. A very high unemployment rate and the highest level of household debt. That's the result of this Liberal government. Canadians are worried and they're suffocating. When will the Liberals take action by cutting excessive taxes and red tape so that Canadians can finally breathe and live better? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, he's talking about action. Acting, Mr. Speaker, means putting in place the Major Projects Office and putting in place construction projects in Contrecoeur in Montreal, for example. Last week, we made an announcement, almost $100 million, that's going to create 1,300 new jobs, Mr. Speaker. That's action. Action is reuniting the Canadian economy to increase productivity across the country. Action, Mr. Speaker, on affordability is cutting taxes for 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. And while this government is acting, well, on the other side of the House, they're just obstructing our efforts day after day.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, on March 12, 2026, in Montreal, Seong-Woo Kim, 55, was stabbed to death in his own convenience store, his dépanneur, in broad daylight, by Xavier Gelatli, an individual known for years for his violent behavior and severe mental health issues. As early as 2016, authorities warned that he was at risk of killing someone if released. Despite this, after serving his sentence, he was released without adequate supervision. In the Eustacio Galeazzi case, it was the parole board's risk assessment that came under scrutiny. In both cases, warnings existed. Why were they ignored?
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me just first extend my condolences to the families that are impacted by this heinous act. And let me also assure my colleagues that this was an decision of the Independent Parole Board. And what we will do is strengthen, Mr. Speaker, in the bills that are before the House today, we will strengthen bail, Mr. Speaker. We will strengthen sentencing. We will strengthen the rights of victims. And we will work with all parties to ensure the increased safety and security of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, we had a special committee at Public Safety Committee to study this case, Eustacio Galeazzi, who was released and killed Marilyn Lévesque in Quebec. And today, years later, here we are with the same problem. Here's an individual who should not have been released, should not be out free, and killed a man in his own dépanneur. Why nothing? Why has nothing been done over the last 7 or 8 years? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, let me just express my condolences to those who are impacted by this heinous act. But let me also assure Canadians that we are working to strengthen bail laws, Mr. Speaker, strengthen sentencing, strengthening victims' rights, as well as to ensure that those who are impacted by violence are supported through the number of bills that we have, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Dorval, La Chine, La Salle.
Canadians deserve to live in communities that are safe, secure, and free from gun violence. Our government made a clear commitment to remove assault-style firearms from our communities. Les armes à feu comme...
Firearms, like the AR-15, designed to kill human beings, have no place in Canada. As the March 31st deadline for submitting claims approaches, can the government provide Canadians with an update on the assault-style firearms compensation program? Thank you. The Honourable Secretary of State for Nature.
I would like to thank my colleague from Dorval, La Chine, La Salle for an important question. The assault-style firearms compensation program is a success. Over 51,000 firearms have already been declared. Yes, and gun owners still have 8 days to submit their declaration. Mr. Speaker, instead of spreading disinformation, the members of the opposition should help their constituents get the compensation they are entitled to while they still can.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The last decade of this Liberal government has been absolutely devastating for the Canadian auto industry. We've seen
auto production go from 2 million vehicles a year down to 1.2 million. And even worse, this year we've seen auto exports decline by 55%. This is devastating for auto workers. Plants have closed. Many have lost their livelihoods. The Liberal plan for the auto sector seems to be managed decline. So instead of managed decline, why don't they join us, get tariff-free access to the United States by supporting the Conservative Renewed Auto Pact?
Great idea. L'honorable ministre de l'Industrie.
The Honourable Minister.
A lot of things in there that doesn't make sense. First and foremost, every time we're investing in the auto sector, they talk about it and they put it down. What I mean by that is we have a new auto plant and they're late. They've been late and too late. What I mean by that also, Mr. Speaker, is they think that we should just basically wait for Washington to change their mind or to go back to the 1960s with the Auto Pact. We have a plan, we'll protect workers and we'll attract investors.
Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
I don't know what's more troubling, the fact that she doesn't recognize that a decline from 2 million vehicles a year to 1.2 million is devastating, or she talks about her plan, which includes exporting vehicles to Europe. Mr. Speaker, more vehicles were stolen in Canada last year, including 2 of the Justice Ministers, than were exported to Europe last year. We actually have a plan. It's a plan to get tariff-free access to the United States. It will boost auto production. It is supported by Unifor Local 222 said, finally a common sense plan to restore auto production. Why don't they get on board and stop with this managed decline?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, what they have is not even a plan, it's an auto pitch. Because the reality, when you look at it, is they didn't even consult Unifor, the very workers affected by the plant closures. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, Unifor has said that their ideas will permanently threaten the future of Brampton and Ingersoll plants, which doesn't make sense. Mr. Speaker, there are good news in the auto sector. The investment by Toyota and the production at Toyota and Honda is up. We're opening new battery facilities, 3,000 new jobs, and we'll make sure also that
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Last week I was privileged to walk the line at Oshawa GM Assembly Plant speaking with auto workers directly, and I could see firsthand the pride, skill and dedication that built Oshawa's auto industry. But they are the ones paying the price for this Liberal government's inaction. Uncertainty is making it harder for them to plan their futures and count on stable livelihoods. We need to protect their jobs and grow Canada's auto industry. Will the Liberals finally stand up for Oshawa and all auto workers and support our Conservative plan for a tariff-free auto pact?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, I have a lot of respect for Oshawa auto workers and my colleagues, but the reality is she should talk to her colleague from Oshawa North who went to Washington and talked down Canadians saying that we're having a hissy fit regarding the trade war and not defending the auto workers and not even defending the investments that this government is making in them. Mr. Speaker, we have an auto plan. It's a good one. She should also talk to Unifor because this union, which represents also the workers in Oshawa, is against their plan.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
It'd be awfully nice if we saw this Liberal government do something. I know firsthand Unifor members love our Conservative auto strategy. Maybe it's time they spoke with folks on the assembly line. Since 2015, auto production in Canada has been cut in half. It is down another 7.8% under this Liberal Prime Minister. At a time when unjustified American tariffs threaten our sector, the Liberals have failed to table a plan that would persuade Americans to remove tariffs on Canadian goods. Will they support our Conservative plan to double auto production through a tariff-free auto pact?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't know know what workers that member was speaking with, but it sure wasn't the president of Unifor Local 200 who said the problem is that he went ahead and did not consult with Unifor, and it's very, very frustrating to see the things that he put into place knowing we would be in big trouble. But the president went on to say, John Dagnolo, he's ecstatic over the otter measures, which are so important to our community when he was referring to the Liberal plan. He said it's important as time goes by and the market starts to turn that we give Canadians the option, and that's what the federal government's done with this policy. So if she wants to know what workers think, she should talk to the union.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals promised 1,000 new police officers in their last election campaign. Now, talk about a broken promise, because just today we learned that not only have they not hired those 1,000 officers, they are down 3,400 police officers. That means we are down over 4,000 police officers from what they told us we would have in the last election. Wow. At a time when crime is skyrocketing, how can Canadians feel safe when these Liberals can't even hire police officers?
The Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be very clear. As part of the platform last year, we committed to hiring 1,000 new CBSA as well as 1,000 new RCMP personnel. We've already started on that process, Mr. Speaker. We had the first cohort of CBSA officers that graduated from Rigaud, to which the member opposite was in fact invited to the graduation. We will be rolling out the first cohort of RCMP personnel over the next coming weeks, Mr. Speaker, as the new fiscal year begins.
Member for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about the new cohort that's being hired. Is that part of the 1,000 that were promised, or the 3,400 that we lost, Mr. Speaker? The Liberals can't distinguish between the two. Let's look at the stats. Violent crime up 55%, failure. Sexual assault up 76%, failure. Gun crime up 130%, failure. Extortion up 330%, failure. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that's going down are the number of police officers in Canada. Why can't these Liberals get their acts together and hire the police they promised?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about the facts, Mr. Speaker. 1,000 new CBSA officers, 1,000 new RCMP personnel, $1.3 billion for border security. Bill C-12, Mr. Speaker, the Strong Borders Act. We have Bill C-14, which will strengthen bail as well as sentencing, Mr. Speaker. We have Bill C-16 that will strengthen victims' rights. That's the record of this government, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be making sure that every Canadian feels safe in their communities. That's the work that this government's been doing since April 28th of last year.
The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, these Liberals talk about hiring 1,000 new RCMP officers. They can't even keep up with losses. The Liberals are failing to recruit, train and retain the police we need to protect our communities. In rural Canada, where I represent, police are stretched to the breaking point. They can't keep up with the wave of violent crime that these Liberals have unleashed. The Auditor General has now reported that under this Liberals' watch, the RCMP is short 3,400 officers, and the gap is continuing to grow. This Liberal Prime Minister and his party made big promises to Canadians. They promised 1,000 new officers, but they are yet again failing to deliver any results. It's time for these Liberals to stop promising, start delivering. Why won't they?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I find it interesting when you dig into the plans that each of the parties put forward to identify what their priorities really are. The Conservatives are criticizing us for failing to deliver on 1,000 new RCMP officers, which the Minister said are going to be graduating over the next number of weeks. What's fascinating, Mr. Speaker, guess how many number of RCMP officers the Conservatives committed to hiring during the last electoral campaign? The answer is zero. Mr. Speaker, we are supporting the front line not only with making new hires, but also giving tools to law enforcement that they have asked for to keep our communities safe. The Conservatives have opposed us at every turn. Despite their opposition, we are going to work with law enforcement to help keep communities safe.
The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, these Liberals can try to distract and make Canadians look away from their absolute failure. The Auditor General report is damning. 3,400 RCMP officers short. This Liberal government is continuing to fail to train and retain the officers we need to protect our communities. And it's at a worse, it couldn't come at a worse possible time after 10 years of that Justice Minister's failure to toughen up our justice system. There is a wave of violent crime rushing across our country, and our police
are completely burnt out. Why is this Liberal Prime Minister failing to live up to his promises to strengthen law enforcement and protect our communities?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague has accused us of trying to distract. Let me be clear. I have no interest in distracting from the fact that the Conservatives campaign on commitment to hire 0 new RCMP officers. I have no intention to distract from the fact that their leader has called the RCMP leadership despicable and called upon the justice system to jail his political opponents. Mr. Speaker, our legislative agenda has gained endorsements to the Canadian Association of the Chiefs of Police, the Canadian Police Association, the National Police Federation, the Ontario Police Association, the new Glasgow Regional Police Force for what it's worth. Mr. Speaker, we will work with law enforcement to keep our communities safe. If the Conservatives finally decide to cooperate, I'd be...
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal Prime Minister promised safety with 1,000 new RCMP officers, but that's just typical banker spin. The Auditor General is now reporting that there are 3,400 officer spots shortage with the RCMP. Recruitment is failing. Training seats are going unfilled, and after a year-long process, only 6% of applicants are making it through. With crime rising at alarming levels, when will this Liberal Prime Minister stop his illusions and bring boots to the ground and protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me just say the RCMP, the first 1,000 of those we're going to be hiring will be coming out very shortly, Mr. Speaker. We've also started to roll out the 1,000 new CBSA officers. What will be important, I think, for members opposite to reflect on is their commitment to the RCMP, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we support the RCMP. We support law enforcement. We've introduced Bill C-22 on lawful access that will give law enforcement the necessary tools that they've been asking for to ensure that the safety and security of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's north is undergoing profound and rapid change. Climate change and increasing activity from foreign actors are reshaping the region in real time. In Labrador, we understand well what it means to move from reliance to resilience, to ensure our north remains strong, secure, and defended. Given our government's plan to defend the Arctic and the North, can the Minister of National Defence update this House on how these generational investments will strengthen Canada's north? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Speaker, my colleague is right. It's up to us to defend and secure Canada from existing and emerging threats. That's why we're moving forward with a $35 billion plan to defend, build and transform Canada's northern and Arctic region. This includes $32 billion for our forward and deployed operating bases, including at 5 Wing Goose Bay in Labrador. Mr. Speaker, we're making major generational investments that matter to build Canada strong and to keep Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, there's nearly 3 million non-citizens in Canada on expired or expiring work permits, and Canadian kids can't find jobs. Today, in a report that shocked no one, the Auditor General found a whopping 150,000 cases of foreign student permit fraud. Worst, we found out that the minister is only investigating 2,000 of them while allocating resources to purchase an entire hotel for asylum seekers.
Wow.
Unbelievable. What a dumpster fire. Is the minister content putting fraudsters in the driver's seat of Canada's immigration system?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that member's performance there. With regards to the Auditor General, we welcome that report, and we agree that strong oversight helps improve the international student program. We will improve how cases are flagged and prioritized, and will consistently follow up on potentially non-compliant students. Our focus is on identifying organizers of coordinated fraud and those who attempt to deceive the system. We take integrity of all our programs very seriously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
By the minister's response, I think she thinks this is a joke. It's not. Canada has an unemployment crisis, and there are millions of non-citizens who don't have a legal reason to be here, who are competing for Canadian kids' jobs. And today the Auditor General found out that there were 150,000 cases of fraudulent student permits. The minister's own team doesn't think she's up to the job, and I agree. Why does she still have her job?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we welcome the work of the Auditor General. We are focused on identifying fraudulent actors and organizers. We are improving prioritization of cases where we are constantly tracking students who do not comply with our rules. Mr. Speaker, we take the integrity of all of our programs seriously.
Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I actually think the immigration system is worse now than it was under Justin Trudeau, and that's quite a feat. And speaking of former immigration ministers, 2 of the previous ones said issuing well over 1 million foreign student permits was good for our economy. And I don't think international students are taking away jobs from people. But today we found out from Blacklocks that the employment ministry knew for certain that that's exactly what was happening. All of these people fail upward in cabinet. Nothing has changed, and it needs to. Why are these failed immigration ministers still in cabinet, in charge of important files, and failing?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I really feel sad for that member who always sees her cup half empty. We have a plan. We have a system that is working. Both TD, StatsCan, Parliamentary Budget Officer, CMHC all commented that our plan is working. Over the last year, we've reduced temporary resident arrivals by more than a half. We brought the asylum numbers down by a third. We refocused on economic immigration like never before. Canadians see that this new government has a plan, and the plan is working, and that's what we will continue to do.
L'honorable député d'Orléans.
The Honourable Member for Orleans. Mr. Speaker, in Ontario, there is a strong Francophone community, and I'm so proud to rise in this House to celebrate French in the context of the International Day for the Francophonie. It's important to strengthen the Francophonie and to attract and retain Francophone talent in Ontario and through Canada. Can the Minister of Immigration tell us what our government is doing to better support Francophone communities throughout the country? The Honourable Minister for Immigration and Refugees. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague for her excellent work. Last week, during the International Day for the Francophonie, I announced new funds for Francophone immigration. With these investments, we are strengthening the capacity of Francophone communities in a minority setting to attract and retain qualified workers. That is how we will reach our objectives and ensure that French thrives throughout this country.
Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been caught misleading Canadians. After his trip to Beijing, he claimed human rights violations and foreign interference were discussed in meetings with CCP leaders. However, government documents I requested revealed that neither of these topics were discussed in any of the bilateral meetings. But today, the Prime Minister is trying to change his story yet again. Canadians want to know, why can't this Prime Minister stick to his story?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary return in question was submitted in error and will be corrected at the earliest opportunity. The Prime Minister has been clear while in Beijing. Canada's position on areas of concern, including human rights, were raised proactively at multiple levels, Mr. Speaker, including by the Prime Minister and his counterparts. I also raised the matter with my counterpart while in China, along with other matters. And I want to emphasize that Canada is a world leader in advancing human rights and the rules-based international order. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
After the last atmospheric river and flooding in the Sumas Prairie, the Liberals promised support. But those were just empty words. Last week, there were 2 atmospheric rivers, but the Liberal government continues to delay action on flood protection in this nationally significant corridor for food production. Ottawa has yet to deliver the millions needed for flood mitigation plans, leaving people, infrastructure, and farmland at risk. When will the Prime Minister deliver the funding needed to protect this vital economic corridor?
Hear, hear. Excellent.
The Honourable Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, I can advise that I have been in contact with officials in Abbotsford and the Fraser Valley region since December of last year. I've attended meetings with a number of my counterparts there, and we will be taking active steps with Abbotsford to talk about flood mitigation strategies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that concludes question period for today. We'll take a moment to allow members to leave quietly.
There we go. That was the end of question period. Well, let's do a quick recap as to what was discussed. Looks like the primary thing that they were talking about was the economy. Yes, the Liberal economic wreckage. That really took up most of the time. Now, instead of going straight to the OAS questions, old age security and the current software failure by the Bloc Québécois, not surprisingly, they were asking questions about the constitutional grab by the Liberals to try to get rid of the notwithstanding clause application by the Quebecers on secularism. So in Quebec, they've added this law. Basically says you cannot wear religious symbols if you're working for public office, right? That's keeping everything secularism. I know that one's for there. I think there's additional laws, but anyway, how they applied this law and some other laws as well was through the application of the notwithstanding clause. Now, of course, the Liberals don't like that. They don't like whenever the Constitution is used in a way that the Liberals don't like, right? Because they don't actually respect the Constitution. They don't actually like to protect the Constitution. In fact, they were the first ones to violate the Constitution in a long, long time by making other citizens second-class citizens for refusing to take an experimental injection. So we know they don't at all protect the Constitution, even though they say they do. As well, of course, the Quram issue was brought up, and it's the same BS. I'm sure they'll be talking about it all week long. They just want them to open the books. It's really what we would like is for them to open the books on bloody everything, right? But they won't. They're going to hide everything. That's the way they work, by hiding all their crimes. As well, violence, crime, no cops issues. So that was also brought up. Now, I'm not surprised. They said now they've lost 4,000 cops. Now, when he said they were losing 4,000 cops, I don't know if those are cops across Canada, in municipal areas, provincial, and the federal. I'm just going to assume that's probably federal. Now, of course, what's strange in all of this, of course, is that both in the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP, they have always had a recruitment system in place. What happened to that recruitment system? Well, the Liberals fucked with it. That's what happened with it, right? They had to manipulate it because they had to make it a racist hiring practice to ensure that they got their affirmative action number requirements, right? We have to have so many black people, so many women, so many people trans, so many people of this gender, that gender, and everything else. And if there's some positions left over, we might give a few to some white folks. But that's about it. So they've been having problems meeting their quotas. So then, of course, they needed to create a whole new training facility for the RCMP. I have what was wrong with the old one? We don't know. Everything went to shit. It's like they had to do everything from scratch again. And now, of course, they've been going, we got 1,000 new cops graduating and 1,000 new CBSA agents graduating. And excuse me, but typically when you put people through a recruit course, the entire course doesn't usually finish. I mean, you always weed out people that are not made for that. That's the entire part of the recruit course also, is to weed out those that don't belong. So you're telling me that all 1,000 are going to graduate? That tells me exactly what was happening in that part of my career when I was in the RCF, when the government decided that, oh, well, we need to start training a whole bunch of people because we didn't train a whole bunch of people for the longest time. So the pendulum swung, and I was at the schoolhouse at the time, and we put more people through the schoolhouse than at any other time in history. We had a new course starting every 3 weeks, putting a new course through. And at the time, of course, that's aviation side for me that I was teaching. And of course, all those courses that we put through, there were some students who did not belong there. But we had a chief instructor who was Navy, which is an appointment within a school that gets the last decision whenever you try to put people through their boards. Whenever a student fails, or they're having issues, and they fail more than a couple of times, and then they have to go and answer questions. Right? They do a little PRB, Progress Review Board. And in these Progress Review Boards, afterwards, there should be a decision made and then a recommendation to the chief instructor to tell them. Now, remember, this is an Air Force facility. Chief instructor is Navy. To the chief instructor to tell them, hey, we got to get rid of these guys. They're just not cut out. Maybe you should remuster to something else. Nope, they had none of it. This guy just let everyone go through it. Then, of course, you don't stay at the schoolhouse forever. You eventually go back to an operating unit. And you get there and they go, we blame you. You're the one who let them all in. I'm like, hey, this wasn't me. It's the system. They didn't care. They just cared about the numbers. And it's the same thing here. So you should be concerned about those 1,000 hoppers coming through, those 1,000 CBSAs coming through. I bet you not all of them are up to snuff. There's no way. The math just does not add up when it comes to training. It just doesn't. But of course, biggest thing is that we've lost 3,400 cops and they've only got 1,000 in the pipe, and those are raw recruits. They're going to be coming through as newbies. 3 years to come up to speed, typically. And their first postings as RCMP are not going to be the nice spots. It's going to be to all the shitty spots. And when they go there, a lot of them figure, this is not for me. This job sucks ass. And then they leave. So we have no troops. We have no cops. So we seem to have getting people in the boots problem. And that is exactly what we warned would happen during the COVIDity stupidity. We warned them. We said this complete abrogation of civil rights by making everyone miserable, by imposing your cultural Marxist will and fraudulent COVID-19 vaccine requirements on people is only going to destroy the confidence in the institutions. And this is exactly what has happened. Now nobody's joining the military. You can't get your troops in the boots. Nobody's joining the RCMP. You can't get your troops in the boots. The people are speaking. The people are speaking. They're saying, liberals, we don't trust you. We don't want to work for you. We don't want to be part of your government. We don't want to work for your government. You people are evil. Get the hell out. They're not listening. Even when they were talking today, that one person was talking about actually talking to people on the assembly line at the car manufacturing plant. She said, no, I talked to the people on the line. They like this plan, right? And then, of course, the liberals right back. They don't talk to stakeholders. They talk to union heads. Oh, they should have talked to the union heads, and they got a completely different idea. Of course they do. Because they're pretty well on a government payroll. See, remember, these are the same clowns that decided after a 6-month study to find out if flight attendants who have been getting paid for non-flying work for years are not getting paid, needed to do another study to study the last study that proves they're not getting paid. Because the stakeholders that they talked to were not the actual flight attendants. That's the insanity we're dealing with this liberal government. And, of course, immigration. Wow, can't go a week without some immigration BS. I'm sure this will come up again. 150,000 cases of fraud, of student fraud, immigration fraud, doesn't matter. And, of course, they're only going through about 2,000 of those cases. And they're saying, what the hell? How did we get here? And of course, Diab tried a new tactic today by trying to make fun of the opposition member, but trying to talk down their actual real concerns about what the hell is happening in our society. She's just making it Yeah, bloody hell. And they're like, no, we're working all those cases. And of course, she's like, they want to spend a whole bunch of money to house these people in a hotel. Sound familiar? Like what they did in the UK, like what they're doing in Ireland, like what they're doing in a whole bunch of other places in Europe, because they won't kick them out, because they feel some kind of human rights need to give them housing. Oh, we have a constitution. They're not Canadian. They shouldn't be protected by the Constitution at all. But of course, right after those three questions, well, then of course, Lena Diab gets fielded a question from one of her own Liberals, specifically about immigration. And then she goes on and says, oh, it's wonderful. We're going to be bringing in more French-speaking migrants into Quebec to help your francophonie. Yes, because I'm sure the French teenage unemployment rate in Quebec is better than the rest of Canada. Not. They don't care about Canadians. They are in a rush to replace you all. And of course, the Prime Minister did lie. I covered this on my second breakfast, and this is in regards to a statement regarding whether or not they brought up human rights concerns to the Chinese communists. And the Prime Minister stated that he had, and a Conservative wanted the proof. So he staffed it. And then Kevin Lamoureux, the crazy guy who has his own Crazy Kevin videos on my channel, had to come back and tell him the truth. Because, you know, that's that order paper I showed at the beginning of the show, stating that, no, it was not brought up. Then you just heard Anita in the House trying to lie to Canadians, saying, oh, well, we brought it up on the side conversations and here and that and blah, blah, blah. No, all lies. All lies. If you read what Kevin Lamoureux actually gave out as a response to the order paper, what she just said is an outright lie. Then again, Liberals are allowed to lie to you all they want. All they want. Because there are no fines. And you can't call them a liar either in the lower house, or else you get ejected from the house, even though they're lying. I think that is all, except, of course, for the atmospheric river by the NDP mentioned at the end. Well, it looks like the Okanagan Valley is going to get some more look at. So they're going to study this last study to see if they need to study it some more, basically, is what they're saying. Because any NDP holdings, unless, of course, they're looking to bribe you to come over to the Liberal side, you're not going to get any money. And seeing as they think they've got enough votes on their side now, I think they're probably done trying to bribe more people to come over. But you never know. Liberals have no ethics at all, no morals, and they certainly don't respect human life. Well, that brings us to the end of the Sun Nap, the no answer period. Thank you all for coming out. If you've actually waited to watch to the very end, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the second breakfast, and then we'll be back in the afternoon at 1:30 for the nap. Well, let's see if my intro will play.
Hear the parliamentary secretary. Order! I will let the parliamentary secretary. Order. Now I'm going to let the parliamentary restart from the beginning so I can hear the response. And then
if the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that.
The Minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears.
It's really hard to follow, isn't it, Mr. Speaker?
All of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Canada know that this government has their back and we will continue to do that. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Deficits are driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Hey, of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are...
Means being honest.
Mr. Speaker, the grand reveal has been made.
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
There was some very unparliamentary language that we heard today.
Sets us up well for the new world order.
Turns out that the chair of the company is the former leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, and 3 of the directors are close family members of former Liberal MPs. So given that, are we to believe that it is just a coincidence that this cabal of Liberal insiders received this $200 million sweetheart loan?
Here, provided a $206 million below market rate loan and nearly $150 million.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
My comment by telling the truth that the answer was bovine excrement.
History. Not 1 inch of pipeline was constructed while he was as the leader of the Conservative Party when they were in government. Not 1 inch to Tidewater, Mr. Speaker. Now contrast that to this government where we have record amounts of oil and gas being exported. Look at LNG alone, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that realizes the potential of the prairies, unlike the Alberta MPs that stand up and do nothing. They don't even listen to Daniel Smith. Shame on you.
Just a reminder to parliamentary secretaries, you don't speak directly to members, to the speakership.